everybody, and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're reviewing WWE Money in the Bank 2022. Now, if you haven't seen any of my shows before, I review everything here on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right into it. First match of the evening for the Women's Money in the Bank briefcase. Alexa Bliss versus Asuka versus Becky Lynch versus Lacey Evans versus Shotzi versus Raquel Rodriguez versus Liv Morgan. Personally, I thought this was my favorite match of the night. I thought this was the best match of the night. They started off hot. I enjoyed this. There were a couple of car crash moments, a couple of times where it looked like somebody really got hurt. Becky Lynch dropping a leg on Asuka on the outside where it looked like most of Becky's, how should I say this, upper thigh region hit Asuka squarely in the rib cage. It looked like she may have got hurt there. I want to say Alexa Bliss hit her head on one of the ladders. It didn't look like it was on purpose. It looked like it might have been accidental. There's a couple little sloppy spots like that. But with this kind of match, you have to expect that because there are so many moving pieces and so many ladders involved. The craziness is just gonna ramp up that you can see something like that, see something that wasn't supposed to happen. Overall, a pretty good, like I said, it was my favorite match of the evening. Liv Morgan surprisingly picks up the win here. I'm giving this a 5. Like I said, I really enjoyed this. My favorite match of the night. Going from that, we go right into a U.S. Championship match. Bobby Lashley versus Theory. I really wanted to like this match. For some reason, it just didn't click. And I like Lashley, and I think Theory's a good wrestler. I just don't know what it was about this. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a terrible match, it wasn't a bad match. I wanted it to be more than it was. Lashley, surprisingly, another surprise win. Lashley picks up the win here. I'm giving this a 3. I thought it was good. I expected it to be a 4 or 5, if that makes sense. Now, coming off of that, we get a backstage promo with Liv Morgan talking about when she might cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase and saying that maybe she'll hold it all the way to WrestleMania. Pretty good little interview. You can obviously see, and this is obvious every time Liv gets a moment, she allows her real emotions to come out. And I think that's why she connects so well with a lot of the fans, because we can feel what she is feeling, because she allows herself to cry. She allows herself to get emotional. She allows her voice to break. It really adds a little bit to it, makes it believable, especially with an underdog character like hers. It really gets you on her side. Now, coming off of that, we go into a match for the Raw Women's Championship. Bianca Belair versus Carmella. I got Carmelo Anthony on my brain, I guess. Carmella looked awesome here. She stepped it up a lot. Bianca, one of the best wrestlers in the WWE. This match, I have to take some negative off because there was no question who was winning this, and B, this match would have been more suited for a Raw main event than on this pay-per-view. It was a good match. Again, kind of like where I felt Lashley and Theory, they just didn't click here. Bianca picks up the win. I'm giving it a 3. Afterwards, Carmella attacks Bianca, which gives us the tease that maybe Liv Morgan will cash in, but she does not. So, again, another match on paper I thought was going to be better. And it wasn't bad. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying, to me, it felt like it fell a little bit short. The next match of the night, we got the Street Profits versus the Usos for the Universal or Undisputed Tag Team Championships. They have both sets of championships. I really enjoyed this match. I know this is Run It Back number 700, 5,000, 800, whatever it may be between these two tag teams. But I could see these guys go for forever against each other. I thought this was a really solid match. I thought there were very subtle hints that the Street Profits might be breaking up soon. And I think the obvious thing is, and what everybody is expecting, is Montez Ford to go on and be on his own and be a major player on his own. Not saying that Dawkins can't, and I do think Dawkins is awesome as well. But I think the thought going from this, or coming into this, is when they do break up, Montez will be the Shawn and Dawkins will be the Marty. Usos do pick up a win here. A little bit of controversy because Ford's shoulder was shown not to be up during the pinfall. So we'll see how that plays out. I think that I'm almost 100% sure that was on purpose. Like I said, Usos pick up the win. I'm giving it a 4. It may have been a 5 if the finish was a little better. I don't like it even storyline wise. I don't feel like you should do wonky finishes on a pay-per-view, especially one of this magnitude. They're trying to make Money in the Bank one of their bigger pay-per-views of the year. They wanted to run this in a stadium. It's because of stuff like that that the fans don't accept it as being a big show, if that makes sense. Also, the lack of Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar being on the card obviously points to this is not a big show, in my opinion. Coming from that, we get a backstage or a vignette, and it had a lot of Bray Wyatt vibes. However, watching it in the vignette, you seen what looked like Jeff Hardy's armbands, the Dudley Boys glasses, a gold medal. There was a license plate in there that said Latino Heat. So, I think, and there was a lot of religious iconography as well. It kind of reminded me of the Edge debut videos more, and it makes more sense with the clues that were in the video that this would be tied to Edge. These are all guys he had feuds with the Guerreros, the Dudleys, the Hardys, of course, Kurt Angle, all guys that Edge has had a feud with in the past. So I think this is an Edge video. I don't think it's a Bray Wyatt video, even though it was very much done in the Bray Wyatt style, and it feels like they recycled some of his old videos to use in here. I do think this is for Edge, not Bray. Now, coming off of that, we get our SmackDown Women's Championship match. Ronda Rousey defending against Natalya in what's billed as who can make the other one submit, although it's not a submission match. I thought this again was a good match, not a great match. There were a couple times it felt a little wonky. I really feel like Ronda has regressed, and I don't know why it is. Maybe it's her heart's not in it anymore. Maybe she's just doing this to collect a paycheck at this point. But I just don't think the promise that Ronda Rousey once had and the star power she once had are all pretty much gone at this point. Ronda does pick up the win. I'm going to give the match a 3. During the match, Ronda's knee looked like it was hurt. So we get a cash-in from Liv Morgan. Now we have an impromptu match. Liv Morgan cashing in her Money in the Bank, which was won earlier in the night, which I believe all but maybe one or most of the women's Money in the Bank cash-ins happened that same night. They keep going back to that well. They could have redid this. I think it might have been, and I'm going to talk about this here in a second. I liked what they did here, but they could have maybe did something different with the women's. And I know because there's 2 Money in the Bank matches now that they want to have a cash in on the pay-per-view to give you that shock and awe moment. This was definitely a shock. Ronda starts dominating Liv. Looks like she's pretty much going to destroy her. Liv manages to get Ronda in a roll-up and pins Ronda Rousey. I thought that was an awesome thing for her to do. Not much of anything here. I liked the way it played out. I did like the cash-in. Liv Morgan is the new SmackDown Women's Champion. For the cash-in, I'm going to give it a 5 because it ties into the opening match. It ties into Liv Morgan. And I thought it was just awesome. I think it's great to see someone like Liv Morgan, who I've been able to see since she was in very early developmental, before she was even Liv Morgan, all the way up to now, and where she is. And I actually have an autograph from her before she was Liv Morgan. What was it? I think Daddy-O. She went by something close to her real name, and she may have even been using her real name at that point. Liv picked up the win. Great to see her evolution. I think she's someone that the fans really do connect with. I think unless they pull something like they did with Nikki ASH and kind of destroy that, they have someone they could build to they have someone now that they built to a main event level that the fans can really get behind. Now, coming from that, our final match of the evening, the men's Money in the Bank match, which is, again, why they should have had a world championship here. Because then you have the question, will the men's Money in the Bank winner also cash in? Or at least give him the option. Give that option out there. Put that thought in people's heads. Maybe they'll buy Peacock for it. Maybe they'll buy it on pay-per-view. Or wherever you are, however you may have got this, you may have tuned in. There was the thought that, okay, let's say Reigns and Lesnar are going to wrestle, maybe whoever wins the Money in the Bank, after that grueling match, they cash in and they become the new champion. Which kind of makes it feel like, at least on this one, the women's Money in the Bank match was more important, even though it was the first match on the card. So we get the announced participants: Drew McIntyre, Madcap Moss, Omos, Riddle, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, and Sheamus. And then we have Adam Pearce comes out on the stage and he says, since we're in Las Vegas, we're going to do like we would do in Vegas. And I thought they were going to double down and make it add 7 more people. He goes, we're going to add 1 more person, and he adds Theory to the match. The second he added Theory, I knew Theory was going to win. There's no reason to have Matt there, and I kind of wish they didn't do it that way. I kind of wish he would have ran down and got it, kind of like Brock did the 1 year. And I know, there was always a question on this. It could have been, the obvious answer would have been Rollins, because you have the built-in thing with Cody Rhodes, because I believe Cody Rhodes was probably the person that was penciled in to win this originally. Riddle, where Riddle could win the championship, and then you have the built-in feud with Orton, because Orton becomes a number 1 contender at Royal Rumble or something to that effect. McIntyre, who can challenge for the championship in the pay-per-view they have coming up in England here I believe it's 2 months from now. There's 1,000 different ways they could have got it. Sami Zayn, who said he was going to win it to keep from someone cashing in on Roman, could use it, and then being Sami Zayn, have turned on Roman in one of Roman's moments of weaknesses. Last, we got Theory in the match, and I get it. Theory's a great wrestler. Don't get me wrong. I'm not crapping on Theory. It just felt kind of anticlimactic when they put him in here. It was a pretty good match. Not quite as good as the women's main event or the women's Money in the Bank match. I thought it was pretty good. Obviously, like I said, it's kind of obvious. I said it 10 times already. Theory does pick up the win. I'm going to give this a 4. Overall, the pay-per-view had some ups and downs. The women's Money in the Bank ladder match, I think, may have been the best women's Money in the Bank ladder match so far. Liv cashing in was an awesome moment. The Street Profits and the Usos never disappoint. Then there were some low lights. Lashley and Theory, I felt like was a little bit ho-hum. Bianca and Carmella, same. Natalya and Ronda Rousey, same thing in my opinion. So there was a little bit of an ebb and flow. For all the great, we got some just average as well. For that, I'm going to give the card itself a 3. I think there was a lot of the average made the card pull down a little bit. And like I said, because there was no men's world championship, there was no threat for that to be something that could be cashed in. And they could have easily done it. Even if you didn't do the cash in, they could have at least had him there. I mean, what would it hurt for him to be there? Anyway, like I said, I give the whole card a 3. I did really enjoy Liv's arc and Liv's story through the show. I think she's the big saving grace on this. If you made it this far, smash that like button, share, subscribe if you haven't, and if you made it to the end, give me a Liv in the comments for Liv Morgan winning the Money in the Bank briefcase and then cashing it in on Ronda Rousey. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been my review of WWE Money in the Bank 2022.